Hello everybody and welcome back to my videos. We are on video number 6. And of course, as an attorney, I don't know everything about everything, so I thought it would be fun to bring in another attorney friend of mine who can help talk about some different things with legal matters. So this is on Hamy's Helpful Hints, but I'm also going to have with me today Dustin Hay. He's an attorney here with me in Ellington. And Dustin and I met probably about 4 years ago when I first started here. And he and I both had the same opinion actually when we got started, because I was coming in here to this building to rent, and Dustin was already here. He's got an office here in Ellington and in Tampa. And he was already here, and he had the same attitude as I did, kind of like, oh, another attorney in the same building, might be some competition, might not be good. But actually, we became really good friends quickly.
Yes, best 4 years of my life, too. I'd like to interject that right
Thank
now.
you. And we actually do different areas of law, so it works out really well for referrals and things like that. So he does personal injury, criminal, and domestic relations. And so what we're going to talk about today is some domestic relations issues. Unfortunately, with COVID-19, I think that's going to be a hot topic we're going to see over the next several months, of people being quarantined together. So that can sometimes lead to some crazy things. So Dustin, tell us, domestic relations, that is a broad topic, if you will. So when we think of domestic relations, what are we thinking of? What does that term mean?
It can mean a lot of different areas within the scope of a domestic situation, whether it involves children or dispute over money between a husband and a wife. It could involve paternity, where maybe the identity of the child's parent is in question or issue. It could involve a divorce or a dissolution matter. It could involve all types of domestic violence situations. There are injunctions that can be in place. There's a rather lengthy list of things that it can encompass. I would feel comfortable saying generally it's what you think it is. It's family law issues, it's domestic issues, things of that nature.
Okay. So I'm thinking about getting a divorce. I come to you. Kind of what's going to be the process? What do I need to bring to you? What are you going to want to talk to me about? Kind of explain to me, if I'm a client coming to you, what you would want me to bring to the office for our first meeting.
Well, I want you to bring obviously a great positive attitude, because we know that potentially there could be some issues going forward, and just bring some of the background information with you regarding the parties. If we're going to file anything, we're going to need dates of birth for children, social security numbers. Bring your driver's license as well. There is a lot of technical information that we will need, especially if children are involved.
Okay.
The judges want that. They need to know exactly the identity of the children. The documents have to be in a certain order. They have to be filled out. There has to be a lot of information given. There's a lot more work involved in domestic situations or dissolutions, especially with children, and especially if they are contested. There's a lot of work involved, a lot of paperwork. It's very technical. So definitely bring all that information. If you've been served with any documents, whether it's a petition for dissolution, some type of paternity petition where someone is seeking child support, or to determine who is the parent, bring that documentation and that paperwork with you as well. And generally we'll sit down, and what I try to do with my clients, I really try to help them come up with a good game plan going forward. And so that documentation is going to help me advise you on what I think is going to be in your best interest going forward.
Okay. So court, I mean, for us, court's not a big deal because we go all the time. So,
Right.
but for those people who don't go to court, that's a scary concept. So I'm your client now. I brought you in all this paperwork you've advised me I need to bring in. We filled out the documents. You have filed those documents. We are now getting to the court process. So explain to us what's going to happen when we go into the court process. What am I going to expect as the client going in to get in front of the judge or in front of the magistrate?
Well, and that's going to depend on what the factors are. If there are no children involved, and it is just, for example, say it's a dissolution and there are no children involved, If both parties are unable to come to an agreement with regard to settling the case, then what you can expect is, it's going to take some time to get through the process because there's going to have to be a trial scheduled. There's going to be a lot of things that we're going to have to go to do to get your case resolved. What I try to tell people up front is, the best parties to get your case resolved, the best persons in the best position to handle your case and get it resolved is going to be you. It's going to be you and your spouse. You know, if you're going to have the judges and the lawyers figure out your dissolution and come to a decision, that eventually will happen. It's going to happen. We'll take care of it. But, it's going to take some time. It's going to cost you money, and it's going to be a stressful scenario for you. It's always better if you can come up with a resolution. And it may not be everything that you want, but if you go to court, a lot of times you're not going to get everything that you want either. So
to be reasonable.
You have to be reasonable, and you have to adjust. And judges are human beings, and lawyers are human beings, and we all do the best that we can to try to get your situation resolved as fairly and as efficiently and as quickly as possible. But I always tell people this all the time: you are in the best position, especially depending on what the factors are in your dissolution. If there are children involved, that's going to be a whole nother situation with the judge.
Yeah, and you've mentioned children a few times, so obviously there's a lot of domestic situations that are going to involve children, where somebody's getting a divorce, there's still minor children. That's a sticking point because a lot of times both parents want custody or think they should get sole custody. So tell us, what are... I think time sharing, we've talked about before, comes up as a big issue. Child support becomes as a big issue, which can be a point that people will use as a bargaining tool sometimes, I think. But talk to us about time sharing, child support. What do you see? Especially, I know I know there's some state laws and there's counties that judges can be one way or the other. Sometimes you see in some of the counties. So, what do you see generally? Is there something you see more of in Hillsborough County or Manatee County, Sarasota County, the counties that you practice in? What kind of expectations can people expect when they are looking at child support or timeshare issues?
Well, I'll break that into the time sharing issues first.
Okay.
I think what people need to understand is whoever is able to co-parent the best, generally speaking. Now, there are always going to be exceptions depending on what the parent-specific situations are. For example, if one parent is in prison for, life, the judge is going to take that into consideration. Obviously, there's not going to be a lot of time sharing in prison.
Are they going to give any time sharing in that situation?
Not really.
No? Okay. I was just curious. If the other parent would be forced to take the child to the prison, or how that would work.
That's gonna break down on what kind of specifics are, and that's gonna be kind of a difficult situation for the judge to get involved in. But I think that most of the time those cases kind of resolve themselves.
Okay.
I just use that as an example of, you have one parent who's in a very poor position when it comes to co-parenting, and you can all come all the way back to where both parents are good parents. And generally what judges want is they just want people to be able to co-parent. And co-parenting is basically being able to get along, to be able to put your personal differences aside and do what's in the best interest of the children.
I was just going to say, I often hear, best interest of the children, and what does that mean? What is the judge looking for when they say best interest of the children?
That means exactly what it means. Judges are generally like boxes of chocolates, and they're human beings just like the rest of us, but best interest of the children means what it means, and they generally want to do the best thing. They're concerned about what's in the best interest of the children. They're not necessarily concerned about, the parents first. They're going to approach the case from what's in the best interest of the child or children before them. And so they're going to work from that position back to what their decision is going to be. So I always tell parents, you want to make sure that you are in the best position to be a good co-parent, that you're in the best position to put your children's interests first. And generally speaking, with exceptions, most of the time, you need to be the parent that can demonstrate that you're willing to co-parent and nurture that relationship with the other parent. And again, there are some situations where that's not going to apply. But as a general proposition, two good parents who want to get divorced aren't particularly fond of each other at this time and point. You're going to want to demonstrate to the judge that you're willing to co-parent and give your children time with the other parent. If you can't do that, and you have a lot of reasons that maybe make sense to you but may not make sense to the judge, it could be detrimental to you at some point. Every case is different. Every time sharing case is different. There's so many factors that go into it. It's very hard to generalize. But yes, that's basically what best interests is. It's exactly what it means. A judge is just looking at what's in the best interests of the children. And that's their number one concern. And whatever decision they make, they are, for the most part, they genuinely believe that that's what's in the best interest of the children. So you have to kind of take that into consideration as you're moving forward. They understand and get that maybe you don't like the other parent that much, or there's been issues or things like that, especially if it's heavily litigated or heavily contested. But that's really what you need to keep in mind.
Okay. And what about child support? How's that that play out?
Well, child support, you're gonna base it on guidelines, base it on time sharing, and then you're just gonna basically want to come up with the best result that works for both parents based on the time sharing. So
and these are guidelines that the state has put in place? Okay.
That's correct. And you have to be able to resolve your time sharing issue as well too. In other words, percentages of overnights, you're going to have to be able to resolve that. And I always tell people the best people to resolve that is it's going to be you. It's going to be the other parent. And if you guys can do that, both of you can do that, then it's going to be so much easier for everybody involved.
So again, reasonableness.
Being
reasonable
yes.
with your demands and
yes.
your expectations as it relates to the...
Yes, and that's not always easy to do.
No, I know.
In a domestic situation.
Right.
That's generally why, we're in the office and
right.
we're having the conversation
right.
and, people are in the lawyer's office for a reason, not because right. I'm a really good looking guy or anything and they just want to come see me.
They just want to come visit us.
Right.
Hi.
Yeah, it's not that. So it's interesting trying to work through some of those issues and help people out with that.
Okay. So COVID-19 is obviously a hot topic right now with everything that's going on. And I've seen a couple things posted of people who are talking about, one parent is an essential employee, so they are going out of their way to not be able to see their children because the other parent has deemed, hey, you're an essential employee, you're out there in the trenches, I'm concerned about you bringing something home to the kids, so I'm just going to keep little Johnny from you while all of this is going on. So do you have any insight on that, or have you heard anything regarding any of how the judges are ruling on that, or what kind of effect the COVID-19 is having on these plans that are already in place, or filing of divorces, or anything in the domestic relations arena right now with everything that's going on?
I think we're starting to see some of that. We haven't really fleshed our way through it yet, the whole thing. I know there was a case recently where, as I recall, the judge did grant the time sharing to one spouse. The other spouse was a doctor, and then I believe it was reversed on appeal. I think it's going to be, I think it's just going to be pretty much across the board, whatever each judge thinks is going to apply. My personal feel on it is I'm not so sure that judges are going to be quick to prevent one parent from seeing their children just because they have a job where they're helping others, putting themselves at risk. But it's going to be a difficult situation, and that's definitely going to be a case by case. I think there are some judges who could reasonably say, you know what, this person is a doctor in an emergency room and they're seeing all types of people, or they work in an assisted living facility and there's been a million cases of COVID in this assisted living facility, so right. I'm going to grant it. I think that's a very extremely difficult issue for me to try to break down how this is going to work. I think it's going to be all over the board. But yes, I mean, basically arguments would be on one spouse. The other spouse has this high exposure job, and I do not want my kids being put at risk. And then the other spouse is going to basically say, well, that's not fair to me because, I'm trying to help people. I'm putting myself at risk. I'm being safe. Um,
Do you think that?
and I'm not a scientist or a doctor, but my understanding is that the majority of people who are at risk from COVID are elderly.
Mm-hmm.
Again, not a doctor, so I'm
This
not.
is our 2 cents, not a
This is
medical,
just my 2
not a medical
cents.
opinion.
But my understanding is that the majority of the people who are at high risk for dying from COVID are elderly.
Right.
Could be wrong about that.
Right.
But and so I think judges are going to take a lot of things into consideration when those issues start cropping up. And time sharing disputes, there can be all types of reasons for why one parent feels that the other parent should not have access, and they could create and fashion some remedies. I suppose they could give them additional time
I was
sharing,
gonna say, do you think they'll give
like
them
make
additional
up
time?
time sharing down the
Yeah.
road. I suppose there are a lot of different things, creative things that could happen with it. But for me to sit here and try to look at that crystal ball and how it plays out right now, it's
None of us know.
yeah.
None of us
But
know.
it will be an interesting time, and certainly those issues will be cropping up for sure. You can guarantee that.
No, we have talked about previously, there's a lot of men and women that are in our military, and we, of course, thank you for your service. And are we going to see differences regarding how domestic relations cases are going to play out if one or both parties are in the military? How is that going to work out? Is that different from normal cases? Is that
No.
different from, are there different scenarios or different aspects of it?
Well, generally in a military case, the pension is going to be the issue, and as a general
Right.
proposition, any benefits accrued during the course of the marriage are going to be subject to equitable distribution. And we generally bring someone on board who's an expert in those areas, who can actually fashion an order that goes to the federal government that basically states that here's what the percentage is going to be. It's really not difficult at all. It's not any different than a regular dissolution, with the exception of the pension factor. Generally speaking, there are some issues when parties are out of state
I was going to ask what if
and
they're out of
things
country
like that, or
something
out of
like that,
country. But generally speaking, we're able to accommodate a lot of those issues and get those done. So that the pension generally is really what the issue is in those cases mainly.
Okay. Well, is there anything additional, any other 2 cents you'd like to throw our way for
No, I
anything
think
domestic
that's
related?
I think that's it.
Just kind of give us some broad strokes.
Yes, I think you generally just want to have a good attitude, try to have a good attitude, really try to come in and be reasonable and be patient, and understand that both parties made the decision to get into this situation, and really it's going to be beneficial if both parties can try to figure a way out. Now that's a lot easier
Said than done.
a lot easier said than done, but it's gonna, if you can somehow figure out how to get halfway there to what I just said, it's gonna be so much better. It's gonna save you money, it's gonna save you grief, time, and again, if you are counting on a judge to make a lot of the decisions, the judge will do it. The judge would prefer that both of the parties, come up with your ideal resolution or own arrangement. They're people just like you, and if they're forced to make a decision, they will. But
You may or may not like it when it's
you
all
may
said
or may
and
not
done.
like it, and a lot of times they probably might even tell you they're not, they're not in the best position to do it. And if they do it, there's a good chance that you may not be completely satisfied with the resolution.
Sure.
So that's another reason, on top of everything else that I've said previously, for you to try to resolve things. And that's one thing that I do with my clients up front, is I really try to get people to resolve stuff and try to come to some conclusions there. I mean, if you want to litigate your case and spend money and spend time, we'll be happy to do that. Okay, I like to do that. Whether that's something that, ultimately is going to be something that you look back on and say that was a great decision,
Never know.
that you just never know. But I do try to help people out, steer them in the right direction, and get them started. I'm more than happy for someone to come in, meet with me, and get everything resolved, sign a marital settlement agreement, and not have to litigate anything at all. That's a feel good moment for us as
Sure.
attorneys.
So you've been doing domestic relations for how long?
About 10 years.
Okay. And like I said, he's got an office in Tampa and an office here in Allenton. And what's your contact number if anybody wanted to get a hold of you?
Contact number here in Manatee is 941-479-4970, and the Hillsborough number is 813-252-6325. My Tampa location is right off of 60 behind Furman Chevrolet.
Perfect. Okay, so that completes our video for today. Hopefully you got a lot of information out of that. Dustin's given you his info. If anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to him. He'll get back to you. He's really good at getting back to you. Again, I'm Jennifer Hamey, practice here in Allenton. My number is 941-932-6217 if you have any questions. These videos will be uploaded onto YouTube as well as onto Facebook. We'll try and get them on our website so you can see them if you have any questions. Coming up in the next couple days, I'm going to be doing my next video regarding funeral planning and some options for when you pass away, things you may want to look into. So if you're interested in that, please come back and join us. And as always, have a great week and a great day. And bye. And thank you, Dustin, for being with us.
Thank
Thanks.
you very much for
Bye-bye.
having me. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Bye.